Okay, this is the second MathType lesson, and this is just on navigating around in MathType and using some of the quick hotkeys that make it so quick to use MathType, and creating some of your own hotkeys for different kinds of symbols you use a lot, or if you know you're going to be using a symbol a lot for a lesson, you can create a hotkey for it. So first I want to show you kind of the basic hotkeys here that are really useful in MathType, and you'll notice that they all kind of key into the letter of the word. Control F gives you a fraction, Control L gives you a low script, like a subscript, Control H is a high script, Control J is both low and high. I'm not sure why that one is J, but we'll look at that. Control R gives you a radical, Control space gives you a space, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. Control parentheses, Control bracket, Control braces gives you resizing parentheses, brackets, and braces. So let's just take a look at some of these. I'm just going to go ahead and open an equation using my little Control E hotkey. And once I'm in there, let's say I want to type x squared plus 3x minus 4. So I want x, and then I want a square, which is a high script, so I just type Control H, and there's my high script, so I can say x squared. Now to get out of here, you could use your mouse button, but you can also use the 4 arrow keys on your keyboard, and if you just arrow to the right, you'll see you get out of there. Notice that that's a bigger cursor, and if I arrow back to the left, I have a smaller cursor again, which means I'm back in the exponent. If I continue to arrow to the left, you see that the cursor size changes. So if you find that you're typing a bunch of stuff and it's not as big as you'd like it, we'd want this to be regular text, you can backspace yourself, use the right arrow to get to where the bigger cursor is, and then you can type in the rest of your text like that. So you can very quickly do superscripts and subscripts this way. Again, for subscripts, we could just say, let's say we want to say x subscript 1, x, Control L for a low script, 1. If I want to say plus x sub 2 squared, I can say x, Control J gives me both a superscript and a subscript in there, minus x cubed plus 4x subscript 3. I mean, it's just very, very quick. Control L for low, Control H for high, Control J for both. Again, I'm not sure why J is both, but it is. So those are a pretty easy use of subscripts. Now what you will notice is if you try to space here, you won't have anything happen, and that's because we're in a math style right now, and I'll talk about styles a little bit more in another lesson. But you should just know that a very quick way to space, you could go up here to the space menu off the keyboard. These are all various sizes of spaces, but the easiest way to throw in some spaces if you want them is just to type Control space. And that basically gives you kind of a slightly smaller space than you would have in normal text. But if you just want to create some extra space in a math equation, you'll need to use Control space or switch to text, which I'll show you how to do in a second, or in another lesson. So some other little hotkeys that you have here. Let me just close this and open a new window here. I'll just delete that one. I said Control F is fraction, so if I want to say 3 1/4, I can type 3, can type Control F for a fraction, 1, and then to get to the bottom of this fraction, I'm just going to use the down arrow off the keyboard. And so there's 3 1/4 minus 2 1/3 plus 5/6 minus 4/9. It's very quick to use, just using Control F every time I want a fraction. Now one of the other things you should know about, and this one I don't memorize the hotkey for this unless I'm going to use this a lot, but I'm going to show it to you. Maybe you want a fraction within a fraction, and sometimes when you do that you get kind of a gross looking, here's 2/3 divided by 1/2, and it just looks way too big, and it doesn't look like the spacing is correct. And so there is also a small fraction option on the mouse buttons up here. This right here is a regular sized fraction, and then this one with the black boxes is a miniature fraction. And so you can see that this one's a lot smaller here. So I could put in a miniature fraction there. I could actually go and delete this and make this one a miniature fraction here. I don't remember what numbers I had in there. But you can see now it looks a little bit more natural to us, a small fraction over a small fraction. If you want more space in here, you could just use that little trick with the position your cursor in front and put in a space on the front and back of that, and that's going to make this line also bigger. because really now the object on the top is larger. It's a space 3/4 space, and so that's why this line has suddenly gotten bigger. Remember that I put in those spaces using control space because there isn't a space in the math text option. Okay, another option that we have here, you can see that didn't take up a lot of space when we put that in because we used the miniature fractions. I'm going to delete that and go down to here to show you this radical one. Again, Control E to jump into my equation real quick. And Control R will give you a radical, so we could say square root of 2 plus 3 square root of 4 minus 5 square root of 2, and you could just go down to the next line and continue typing. Again, Control R for a radical. Now maybe you want an nth root, and for an nth root it is up in this square root menu. There's the one we just used, and notice that at the bottom of the screen down here, when I highlight that square root, you should see at the bottom of the screen Control R. It's telling you what the hotkey is. Right here, this is an nth root, and you can see at the bottom of the screen right now it says nth root, and then in parentheses it says Control T, comma N. And so one way I could get this quickly is to type Control T followed by N for nth root, I think. And so then we could make a third root. And again, you can use your mouse button to click here, or you can just arrow over. And notice if I just arrow out of this, I get outside the box, but I'm not up in that superscript. If I use the up arrow, I'm up in that superscript. So I could say, you know, the cube root of 2 plus, and now I'm going to use that hotkey, which remember was Control T followed by N. And there it is. And so again, I can go up into here. Oh, that one's kind of hard to get to. I'll use my mouse button for that. Plus, you know, the cube root of 2 again. So we can come up with some nice equations using that little hotkey. Now, one of the last things I want to show you, resizing parentheses are in here too. So going into an equation, let's say that we want to, you know, sometimes if you just type a regular parentheses and then you type a bunch of things inside of here, you don't get these nice resizing parentheses automatically. So to get those, I'm just going to delete these ones I just put in. I'm going to highlight all the text I want, and then I'm just going to type Control with the parentheses, which actually, to get that I'm going to have to use, I don't actually have to use the Shift button, I just have to type Control 9, and I get to that Control parentheses. I think if you also do it with the Shift button, it works as well. Let me just double check that. Let me retype this, and Control Shift, oh no, just Control 9 then, so I need to change that on the other screen. So Control 9, which is kind of like giving you the parentheses, gives you the resizing ones. We could also do brackets, and that would just be Control with the bracket key. We can do braces, which would have to be Control Shift to get to the braces, and that gets us resizing braces. They always come in pairs. Now if you want one that's not in a pair, for example, you want one with a parentheses on one side and a bracket on the other side, like interval notation, you can choose it off the menu up here. There's also absolute value signs, all sorts of matrix kind of stuff, less thans and greater thans that resize, and you can also do braces above and below things if you want to highlight something in your text. So those are quite useful to use. So those are all of our resizing parentheses. And let's change this one here, Control 9 for the parentheses, since that's what's right below